and welcome to We Live in a Society. Today I'll be talking about life under hotel quarantine. So I'm currently in Sydney, Australia, in hotel quarantine at the Hilton. So I'm going to talk about my experiences not only under hotel quarantine here in Australia, but also my experiences from the moment I left French soil until I was deposited into this hotel room 13 days ago now by the army. So we get released tomorrow, so I have my release armband on here. So that's great. I've had 2 negative COVID tests, so set to leave tomorrow. Here we go.
Okay, nose, take a deep breath and relax.
So I just like to start off by saying that I do see the necessity for quarantining citizens or residents returning from foreign countries, transiting many different countries and being in close proximity to people for extended periods of time on planes. There's a big chance, there's a higher chance that you may be exposed and infected. So by this point in the pandemic, I would expect that most people, either on holidays when this pandemic first started, or on short working visas in foreign countries, or on maybe longer working visas, but in occupations that have been impacted by the virus, such as like in France, we were in quarantine for 2 months, everything was shut down. So people who worked in bars and restaurants, those sorts of jobs, you would expect that those people would have returned home long before now. So the only citizens and permanent residents that should be returning to Australia from foreign countries would be in the event that there's some sort of emergency situation and they have to go back to Australia, which is in my case. There was a medical emergency and I had to return home. And I'd also just like to say that I'm very thankful for the airlines that have remained operational and that the borders are still open, because I can't imagine if I wouldn't have been able to come back to Australia at this particular point in time. So I booked flights 24 hours before we left France. We just had our carry-on luggage, no checked-in luggage, and I still had real difficulty finding flights, because one of the problems is most airlines are no longer operational. They've closed down, and also a lot of the major transit hubs between France and Australia have closed their borders. So it was very difficult finding flights that could get me from France to Australia without, and being able to sort of bypass all the countries that have closed their borders. And luckily, just a day or two after we'd actually left Paris, one of the others, so usually the major transit hubs are Dubai and London. London closed its borders to people arriving from France, and so we would have had to quarantine 2 weeks in London before we could then continue on to Australia. So we're very lucky we got out just in time. But there was still it was very difficult trying to find flights, because obviously the prices had shot through the roof. It was very expensive, and then you had to do the hotel quarantine when you arrived in Australia, which is no longer government funded. And then also the flights were incredibly long. It took 4 days to get home. We had incredibly long transit periods in both Frankfurt and in Tokyo. We weren't allowed to leave the airport. All the transit hotels are closed. So one of my main concerns was exposing myself to the virus, because I knew as soon as I got back here, I had to test negative, because I had to get to the hospital as soon as I got released from quarantine. So I was paranoid, and I was worried that spending 4 days in airports, I was at high risk of being exposed to COVID. So, but I needn't have worried, because at all the airports, most of the terminals, most of the gates were closed, because there's only a couple of flights leaving every day. And so it was quite easy just to go to a random gate and sleep there and not be in proximity to anybody. So it was actually the airports were a lot better than I expected, and nothing was open at the airports. So it was actually an okay experience transiting. So it wasn't too bad. The aeroplanes, we flew with Lufthansa and ANA, and I take my hat off, because they were very professional and everything ran smoothly. They were great airline companies to fly with. And because of the limits on the amount of people in planes, we had I had a whole row to myself. I could lay down and sleep, and there was no one in front of me or behind me, so it was great. But again, one of the problems in getting flights back is at the time I left, there were only 350 people allowed to come into Australia daily. So after 4 days, we land in Sydney. the first time ever, nobody had actually got up before the plane had landed trying to get their shit out of the overhead compartment to get off the plane. Everything was for once civilized, and so we landed and they told us that we had to go into hotel quarantine, and so we were escorted by the health professionals and by the military and border security. Most of the airport was closed, so we were then escorted into like a separate section that had opened up for passengers arriving from Asia, and we were assigned a medical health professional who interviewed us regarding whether or not we'd presenting with any symptoms, why we were back in Australia, and that sort of thing. And I think that interview went for about an hour, and big shout out to Jeff. He was great. I was obviously quite upset when I landed, and we're very, very well handled, and Australia really got your shit together when it comes to getting people out of the airport. And so then we were assigned, I guess, a hotel and a bus. So we were escorted by the army. Most of the airport was closed off. We didn't leave via the normal route. We sort of went out a side door to buses that were waiting on the sidewalk, and we were escorted by the military, and then the police told us which bus to get onto. And so then we got onto the bus, and we had really no idea what to expect. There wasn't really anybody on the bus to explain what was happening. We were just told that we were getting taken to a hotel. And I don't know, there's about maybe 12 other people on the bus with us, and we're obviously maintaining social distance. And we kind of just drove around the city for like 2 hours. We'd keep stopping in front of hotels only to move on again. And then we eventually pulled up out front of this hotel and found out that we were staying here. But obviously just one by one, we had to get off the bus to check in and be escorted to our rooms. And so that happened. So the only negative thing I could say so far about this procedure was that we were left on the bus at this point, not really knowing what was happening. And once we pulled up and we were told that we were staying here, it was another 2 hours or so before we actually got off the bus. And in that time, a lot of the people on the bus, there was a lady behind us who pretty much the entire time had her mask off and was talking on her mobile phone, and she was directly behind us. And then what was funny is, just a funny story. So I have to say, I love Australia, just the culture. The first thing, a member of the police force came onto the bus, this cop. The first thing he said to us was, that we're staying here at this hotel, but he's going to one by one take us off to check in. We just have to wait. And so the first thing he said was, he goes, in hotel quarantine, there's like a 6 drink per person limit, 6 standard drink limit. But don't worry, Dan Murphy's across. We've got to deal with Dan Murphy's across the road, and you can buy a whole carton there, but we'll just deliver 6 drinks a day to your hotel room. Like, his first thought was alcohol. You've got to love Australia. I just wish the alcohol was as cheap as it was here as it is in France. But anyway, so that was just funny. And then the first guy that had to get off to go get processed, as he stood up, he tripped over the step and fell down, and the cop's like, "There's a stair there, mate." And it's just so funny, because in France people just wouldn't speak like that. They're such a polite society, and I just really missed Australia and the banter that the Australians have. It was funny. But anyway, so eventually, we're second to last off the bus. Because we're at the very back, there's this lady behind us, and this woman, pushes past us to get it, which, and she actually, contacts us as she passes instead of waiting her turn. So, okay, fair enough. So anyway, then we get escorted, because there's only, we're only left. They take us into the hotel. By this time, every other person's, gone to their respective hotel rooms. And then we're being interviewed by a member of the army, and so he's just asking us for our, just all our details, our flight details, while we're here, where we're going to be staying, do we understand our, what's happening, emergency contact details, all that sort of thing, and then told us that someone would be in contact with us once we get to the room, someone from the hotel to sort of explain the quarantine procedures or whatever. So fine. So then we get escorted up to our room. I think that was again by a soldier, and so then he's deposited us into this room, and so we're not able to leave this room for the 14 days. We get COVID testing on like day 3 and day 10, and if we're negative, we get to go home on day 14. So And so when we got to the room, we did get a call from the hotel staff, and they assigned us a mental health worker, like a mental health nurse that we could talk to if we were struggling with the isolation. But after doing 2 months in France, 2 weeks here is nothing. Yeah, as I said, we weren't allowed to leave the room, and so there's no fresh air at all. The windows don't open. We're not allowed to go outside, obviously, into the hallway or anything. We have to stay in our rooms. But I think the Hilton and the Australian government have done very well considering the situation. I mean, this is unprecedented. In saying that, the hotel hotel quarantine is no longer government funded. So the fact that we're paying $4,000 for the 2 weeks, you would kind of expect that since you're paying for it to get a little better service or treatment, because I have heard that a lot of hotels aren't that great. And when we actually, were escorted off by the cop, he's like, you're lucky this is like a really good hotel. And I haven't had any complaints really, but I have heard horror stories on the news when I've been watching that, and on social media. I mean, fortunately we haven't sort of experienced any of that, but we still have had our own issues with, being stuck in here rather than being with my family and stuff like that. But and just the lack of ability to move around, you just get very apathetic, and it is a bit of a struggle, but it's a necessity. And so the hotel staff have been really great here. Like I said, they call every day to check that we're okay. We have been assigned like a mental health nurse if we need to chat. They gave us complimentary, fully stocked minibar and stuff so that we can eat what we want. We're able to place orders with Woolworths and get the groceries delivered here. We're able to place orders for takeout once a day if we like. And we get 3 meals a day, and usually like 4-course meals 3 times a day. I'm consumed with food. There's so much food I can't possibly eat all the food, and it's really good food. I'll put some photos of the kinds of meals that we get for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So yeah, I've been happy with that. So the only sort of human contact we have is there's like security posted outside of our door, so we're not allowed to leave, but we do get our meal services. And so what they do is they usually at a set time, so say dinner's 7 o'clock, so 7 p.m. they'll come and they'll drop all the little boxes of food out front of our door. They'll drop everybody else's off. They'll drop them all off for the whole floor, and then they'll sequentially walk along the hallway knocking on everybody's doors, and then we just yell out thank you. That means we can then come out. It's safe. They're safe because they've delivered them all, and they're going down the elevator, and then we can come out and get our food, and we just see people that are near us. Okay, so one of the problems was that, as I mentioned, the woman that had a mask off and was talking on the phone sitting behind us on the bus just happened to be assigned to the room opposite us in the hotel. And so after a couple of days, I noticed she had the police and the doctors knocking on her door, and she had started to display symptoms of COVID. And so they monitored her for a couple of days, and then maybe 3 or 4 days later, they've taken her away. She's tested positive. They've taken her to a hospital or to another quarantine facility. I'm not sure, but there was just a big sign on the door saying that do not enter this room, that she's tested positive for COVID. And so this is great concern to me, because there were no measures at all put in place on that bus to protect me from other passengers. They should have had the military or the police or some kind of healthcare professionals on that bus making sure that everybody was wearing their masks and maintaining social distance, but that was not done. And so the chances of me then catching COVID from, I mean, I am forced into this quarantine, I have to pay for this, but my health is put in jeopardy by being exposed to other people on the bus. And so I thought that was extremely dangerous situation, and you know, what recourse do I have if I catch COVID off this lady? And several people on this floor have been taken away being tested positive. And yeah, so it's just by sheer luck, I guess, I'm still testing negative 13 days later. So passing your time in hotel quarantine, I guess, can be maybe difficult for a lot of people. I'm teleworking while I'm under hotel quarantine, but also, yeah, I could see how it, if you aren't doing that, how it can become really monotonous, and you could sort of start developing a lot of mental health issues, I guess, especially if you're here for an emergency situation and you're stuck here when you just want to be home with your family. Not a whole lot to do. Like I said, there's no fresh air, there's no balconies, you can't interact with anybody else. Thank God that we have free Wi-Fi here, so I can FaceTime my friends and my family to pass the time. A lot of sleeping. Can't really walk around and exercise in this room. I'll show the room, it's quite small. You can sit on the windowsill though, and just, you know, watch the people going about their lives. Sort of people watch, that's about all you can do. Yeah, we have a great, nice big TV, so you can watch Netflix. A lot of reading. Read about 3 books since I've been here. Yeah, and we have our meals 3 times a day. Yeah, not a whole lot really to do here in the hotel quarantine. I do feel sorry for people who are by themselves, or yeah, because I think that'd be a real struggle. We do get our daily phone calls from the mental health nurse. We get our daily phone calls from the doctors checking up whether or not we're presenting with symptoms. But other than that, yeah, not really any contact except the knock on the door. That's our only link to humanity, is the knock on the door 3 times a day. We sort of poke our heads out and the guards are standing there, security guards are standing there. Yeah, that's about it. Okay, so this is our hotel room. At least we have the ability to make coffee and tea, and we also have a mini bar. Bathroom's not too bad. Got a nice bath. Shower's pretty decent. This is the lounge room. We have a window that doesn't open,